We haven't done a case study in a while, and so I realized today would be a great day to do a case study. And so the case study that I want to go over today is actually an individual who is working towards recovery with her eating disorder. And so this particular individual is dealing with restrictive intake, some purging, and a little bit of over-exercise. So definitely falling more under the anorexia category in this particular case study. Now, the reason I specifically want to point out this particular situation is because this person feels as if they are recovered. And what I mean by that is things are better than maybe they used to be, and she's actually met her weight criteria. And so for this person, she feels like, well, I'm done. But we actually know, based on her behaviors, her metabolic tests, and her body composition, that things aren't as pretty as it may seem in terms of the fact that her height and weight look normal, right? And so we actually have a presentation, it's on YouTube, called Recovery is More Than Just a Number on a Scale. And I think it's really helpful to point that out because that's true, right? Yes, weight is important, especially when someone is severely underweight. We definitely want to restore, but at the same time, your behaviors and what's going on internally in your body are the most important for that full recovery. So about the video that's also on our YouTube, I just want to say, we'll put the link in our description, but it is more tailored towards clinicians and providers and people who are kind of in a clinical setting. So you may not find it super interesting or frankly might not understand all of it, but it is on our YouTube if you're interested in checking it out. And it's actually presented by Annika Kalm, who is the owner of the Kalm Clinic. So let's get into the case, right? Now, this particular individual is 5'4" and 120 pounds. So again, remember I mentioned based on number on the scale, she is weight restored, okay? So that's one of the big issues with this particular case because like I said, she feels like she's recovered. So let me tell you a little bit more detail though. So this particular individual is still restricting her intake. Now, based on her report and what we've looked into with all of her food, her intake is really only between 1,000 and maybe 1,400 calories a day. This person is still purging about twice a month, but sometimes it's as frequently as once a week. It just kind of varies. So that tends to happen if she eats a particular food or something that she felt was bad. And then she's also added in some exercise that is verged on over exercise. Now, she's not doing this every single day, but when she does exercise, she'll go to the gym for 2-3 hours because she has to meet a certain calorie requirement that she burned. So those are some of the behaviors that she's using. Let's take a look at her metabolic test. Here's the results of her metabolic test, okay? And so what you can see is that obviously her metabolic rate is below where it should be. Now remember, that happens from not taking in enough food. What's gonna happen is your body actually compensates by bringing down that metabolic rate because you're not feeding it enough and it doesn't wanna burn more than it's being given. What we also see is that her protein substrate, or that breakdown of lean mass and muscle and collagen and connective tissues and all those lovely things, is way above where it should be. So the body is breaking down too much muscle, collagen, connective tissues, and the metabolic rate is too low, which implies that she's still not taking in enough food. So even though her weight on the scale might appear to be fine, internally speaking, her body is still compensating for being undernourished. Now, this is only the first metabolic test that we've done. We actually haven't done a second one, but the reason I'm still showing you this case is for this exact reason, and it's because this particular individual came into the office only because another clinician recommended that she just check in. And this person was fully expecting for me to say hey, you're done, you're good to go, you don't need to be here. But of course, this wasn't the case. Now let's take a look at her body composition analysis, okay? So now what we're seeing here is that her muscle mass is actually 11 pounds below where it should be, which is way, way, way too low. I've mentioned this, I think, in a couple of other videos, but when your muscle mass is this low, we start to see issues like possibly low bone density, osteopenia, and osteoporosis. We can see issues with immunity and longevity because your muscle mass and your lean mass is actually what's important for your overall health. It's individuals that have a high lean mass and muscle mass that actually help them to live longer and survive different illnesses and things like that. So as you can tell, this is way, 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 way too low. And so this kind of relates to the metabolic test in the sense that the body is still compensating for being underfueled. So it's chipping too much into her muscle mass. And we see that here in her body composition analysis with this muscle mass being way too low. So despite this person thinking that she was recovered, we actually still have a lot of work to do. Now, I want to point out this case specifically because, of course, like I mentioned, she's still using quite a few behaviors that would classify as anorexia, which is the undereating, the purging, and the overexercise. Her muscle mass is too low and her metabolic rate and protein substrate are off, right? Now, the interesting thing though is let's go back to kind of the scale weight. So remember, this person is 5'4" and 120 pounds. So based on the scale, that seems fine. However, given the fact that her metabolic rate is where it's at and her muscle is so low, she actually will need to gain weight. Now, I know that sounds really terrifying, and maybe some of you are listening or feeling like you're dealing with something like this and you're like, I don't want to gain weight, I'm out, I'm done. But what's so important is that we restore that muscle mass. So we really need to work with this person to get that muscle mass up despite her feeling like this is an okay weight for her. Clearly her body is telling us otherwise because we need to restore that muscle mass and lean mass for her optimal health and to get her to a point that she's living a long, healthy life and not dealing with eating disorder behaviors or kind of the physiological fallout that can happen from keeping her intake and her muscle mass so low. So what we're working on with this person is actually getting her to take in more food so that we can restore that muscle mass. The main goal here is to get that up so that she's living a happy, healthy, older self, despite what that might do to her feeling like she doesn't need to gain weight. We will continue to work on that with this person, but here's a perfect instance of someone who actually needs to continue to restore weight even though she feels like she's fine. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. If you have any questions on cases like this or other cases that you would want to see, put it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.